So my name is Mark Wang, and then I come to the States since I was 15 years old, but I was a car guy before I even come to the States. I grew up in Shanghai, China. This is my hometown. This is where I grew up with. And then pretty much since I was really little, I have a collection of Matchbox cars. I have roughly 800 cars. I can put a whole room full of, like, on the carpet. It will cover the entire carpet. There's different sizes. You know, there are very, very small ones that are kind of a thumbnail car, till a medium big size, and then later I start collecting some model cars that are 1 to 18 type of sizes. I've never get anything bigger than that. That's like, since I was little, this is the type of things I do. My toys are, you know, the Matchbox tracks, and then you have different type of cars, and a lot of the cars I actually own today came from the collections, and those were my favorite cars since I was little. So for example, that air-cooled 911 964, that was one of my collections. I actually went back to Shanghai this year to find that very much car that really made me you know, buy the true car that I want. So I think a lot of that came from that experience of just ingrained the car culture. Funny story, when I was little, you know, every single summer I'm in Hong Kong, and I will be buying a Matchbox car a day, and I was pretty much go to the store, and then I'll tell Dad that this is the one I want, and then I was fortunate enough that we can afford it, and then that's how I model cars today. So those cars are still back in China. We've kind of displayed it. Some we tucked in the shelf, and yeah, that's kind of how I started the car journeys. And when I came over here to the States, I think it was a very good experience. It was different. It was a very good experience. I never had any culture shock. That's kind of my personal side of things, and I got into. I was fortunate enough to get into the BMW 335i. That's an E92 model when it first came out, so that was very rare. Bought the car at Cravier BMW. That was what, 13, 14 years ago. That was my first car. Absolutely love it. Really driver's car, very heavy steering wheel, but it was fast. It was fast for me. Then kind of on and off, a couple of other different cars. I think I want to kind of list all the cars that are, I want to list out all the cars that I think that are very iconic in my kind of journey of just being, you know, around buying cars, being a car collector somewhat. The first car I learned manual on is actually a V12 BMW 850i. I thought that was very iconic. I bought it for, I think, 8,500 bucks. Absolutely a beast. The car runs very smooth. Learned how to drive on top of it. But of course, after like 3-4 months, the car starting to have engine problems, like every single V12 BMW. So I got rid of that car, but it was such a great experience. Flip lights, no B-pillars, and like, how rare is it when you get a 850 that's a manual? Like, you know, usually you see a CSI, those are collector cars, but for that type of money, that was absolutely a bargain. But that's actually the car I learned manual on. And then, you know, another manual car that I think that was really, really unforgettable for me is the Aston Martin V12 DBS. So that was a great car, difficult to obtain for the manual version. And I had the black one with the beige interior. That makes it even more rare, because usually the black cars have the black Alcantara interiors inside. So I was fortunate enough that my friend in California, really in Vancouver, by the way, really wanted that car, so I was able to sell it to within the family, and that's how I get into the Lamborghini market. And I think I was fortunate. The first car I got was a 2008 first generation Superleggera, Gallardo Superleggera. In a way, in my mind is that the V10 engine just sounds unreal. It sounds like an F1 car. And everything about that car really kind of heightens my awareness of this, like, you know, what a supercar can be. the car is so loud, but when you're driving it normally, it feels like a regular Audi if you shut the window. Like that duality of things and the quality of it, no rattles, no nothing. The chassis never like, you know, vibrates with the engine. It's no drones. Like these type of things really opens my eye of what a kind of modern or, you know, early 2000s supercar can be. That's another thing that's an eye-opening experience. Well, going back, kind of talking about how do I get into modifying cars? I think the iconic car that really got me into modifying was my R35 GTR. So a lot of people, like, you know, when the first time the GTR came out, it was so rare. I got that car in 2011, and it was a 2010 model. At that time, it's really rare to find a brand new GTR because there was only that much supply in a certain region, and you have to get it used if you didn't pre-order them. So I was able to get a gunmetal one in 2011, finally found one locally for sale. I got that thing. You have to understand, in 2011, when people see an R35 GTR, they would literally jump up and down. I've seen people trying to film me on the R35, almost crash into a divider on the carpool lane. I've seen people jumping outside of the, like, you know, parked in the gas station, start jumping around, filming the car while I'm literally on the street. So a lot of cool stuff with that R35. Over the time, you know, Nissan produced a lot of these cars, so they're not rare anymore. But I will say that I'm one of the OG owners in the Seattle region. When we first started Northwest GTR Club, there's maybe 6 or 7 of these cars. I can name all these original owners as well, and some of them still have the car. But the fact about the R35, I really learned what I want in terms of modifying the car and making the car I want. Self-actualize the GTR to be the car that I want it to be. Of course, and I think the cool part of that is my R35 is the car it is because it was the 22, 23-year-old me that created it. If I created it today, it would have been a completely different car. And that way I appreciate it because that kept a part of the memory of who I was as a person to make the car that how it is today through that experience. The things I did with the R35, like I did a full interior upgrade. I did a very subtle kind of carbon fiber body kit that makes it look alike with a stock version, but just a little bit more aggressive. From a tuning perspective, we put it on full bolt-on, running 600 to the wheel. But you know, Colin, like you've driven the car, what's special about that car is the way it gets into the turbo boost. The torque comes in right away, and that's something that the regular R35s don't get. To me, is I'm never a you know, for me, modifying a car isn't really about getting the big horsepower, getting the peak horsepower. That's not something I'm aiming for. You know, if you look at, this is something that, you know, to you guys as car enthusiasts, what matters in my personal opinion is that it's not the number. What frustrates me is people constantly ask this question, like, what's your peak horsepower? What's your peak torque? It's only a peak number at your entire power band. I look at it as an integral. It's like an area over RPM, right? How can you cover the biggest area? Like, what's your low end torque? Does your turbo fade? That accumulates to how your car drives as a daily situation. I think what's misleading is people kind of offer that peak figure and sacrifices the daily drivabilities and also the high-end performance of the vehicle. And this kind of is a testimony of like what I did, that it wasn't outcome driven. It wasn't a working backwards thing to be like, okay, I need 600 to the wheel, now let's build it that way. It's more of a, hey, let's look at what the engine can support. Let's look at what the clutch can support. Like, I don't want the clutch to slip. I don't want the transmission to worn out quickly, right? With this size of a cam and this size of a turbo, with the right fuel, you know, with the right kind of fuel pumps and, you know, all these mods, what type of settings can it support? Okay, now you know the turbo, the horsepower level you want to run, you know, the turbo boost that you're going to put in. Then you look at the outcome. This car came out to be a certain horsepower. That's what it is. And I'm happy, even if it has 30 less horsepower, I'm also happy. I don't thrive for a number, but I really care about how the car is. So coming back to kind of this R35 experience, what I learned is, you know, a car isn't really about being flashy. A car is really about, with this platform, understanding the limitation, harness what's good about it, really figure out how the car was lacking due to other things, like, hey, there's regulation problems, for example, like the exhaust needs to be muted for some reason, right? There are other cars, not R35 in particular, but like Mustangs, for example, they come in with, you know, skinnier tires because of tax reasons. Figure out what this car needs to be, but couldn't due to some regulations, and modify on top to make the car truly what it is. I think that's really what I believe in. And you know, now let's kind of get into this vehicle. This is a 1999 V-Spec R34 GTR. I was fortunate enough that I was able to get a Nürburgring engine from a local guy here. It was in another project car, and I was able to actually take that engine out and put it in this car. And funny story about why I lent to the Nürburgring engine. We have so many things to share with the viewers here. That, you know, the car, I'm thinking about how long it was. It was probably 2 years ago when I got the car for like the first 3 to 4 months. What happened to the car is that one day I was driving it, and all of a sudden I feel like I can no longer getting the boost. The RPM starting to not climb. I couldn't maintain speed on the freeway, so I starting to kind of freak out, not understanding what went wrong. And I find the earliest exit, cruise it down at 30 miles an hour, park the car right away, and the car just, you know, shut off itself. It couldn't hold idle. So that was interesting. That was January 1st or January 2nd. We had a New Year's car meet, and then on the way home this happened. And I was lucky enough, my friend, my business partner Mo, showed up, and then we were looking at the situation, called a tow truck, towed the car back home. And after we're looking at it, what happened is that the intercooler pipe decoupled when it goes into the engine. So the sensors on, if you know GTR, like Colin, we can, the sensor of the car is on the left side of the engine bay if you're looking at it, but the intercooler pipe decoupled is on the right side. So what happened is the car thinks that it's getting all the air, but in fact the air is not going into the engine, so it's spraying too much fuel in comparison to the air, so the air-fuel ratio is running absolutely too rich, so the car couldn't combust, and that's the whole reason why the car wasn't starting, and we didn't know that. So the moment when I bought the new engine, I was like, okay, maybe the old engine was just bad, and case, but I was fortunate enough that I find a really good deal. Then we ended up just swapping the car anyway, and then, you know, the result was absolutely phenomenal. Like, this is why the car happens to be this way. You know, it's really, I never intended to make this car like this, but when stuff happens, you know, as a car guy, I always look at the upside. That means, hey, maybe it's time to happens for a reason, but you always want to make the best out of it, enjoy all that experience. You know, the engine actually ended up into Jack Ultramotive's R32. They're doing the project right now because his car has a problem. I cascade down that message to him to say, hey, you know, it's never bad. It's always about getting improvements, see it as an opportunity. So that happened to me, and I was able to kind of harness that, you know, adversity and make it good and make something great out of it. So going back to kind of the setup with the Nürburgring engine, so it's an N1 block, and they actually came from one of the 1,000 Nürburgring car that got wrecked before. So we took the engine out, everything is solid. It has HKS 2530 turbos, so slightly bigger turbo upgrade. The cool part of this car is it has VCAM, HKS VCAM. So those are very difficult cars to tune. Kudos to Intech Racing here locally. Lawrence and I spent so much time. Lawrence, you can correct me if not. I think we did over 100 pulls. We spent maybe 4 tanks of gas over a course of maybe 6 months to get this car run perfect. And like with the VCAM, when we're wiring this thing with the HKS standalone ECUs, which is the FCON Pro V Pro, the difficulty was that the wiring instructions are in Japanese. Like, it's so rare that there's people who actually knows how to do this, but we're fortunate enough that Seattle gets the support, so we got the car done. I think the masterpiece of this car is really the equal-length downpipe, the Tomei titanium exhaust, and with the setup. It really makes the car sound so great, even if it's a turbo car. Like, you would think that the turbo cars are muffled on, you know, current cars in general, like 488 doesn't sound as good as a 458 anymore, right? McLaren never sounds just like a Lamborghini. That's the problem. But this car still sounds great, and I think that's the cool part of having is the experience of me, you know, finally get the car up to what it is, and also the fact that the outcome of the car is so good because we didn't really aim for a horsepower figure. It's just really, hey, let's look at what this thing can do and then self-actualize the car. And that's the car that you're seeing here. Put a mark there. The other thing that, you know, people will ask me, a lot of people ask me is, hey, how do you like your, out of your Lambos, do you like your Aventador more? Do you like your Gallardo more? And my honest opinion is I actually like my Gallardo more. That's just the simple question is, why would you like a V10 a lot more than the V12? And I think that's where I want to convey to you guys, hey, when the car speaks to you, it speaks to you. I think the Aventador is a great car, and I think it does have a soul, but if you look at a V10, the sound quality is different. Like, I can never capture it in YouTube and stuff, but if you actually experience the car, the sound quality speaks to it. And I think true car enthusiasts, why people like the Mercy SV, why people like the 430 Scuderia in comparison to like maybe a contemporary car, not even a bad car, let's say Huracan Performante, is the fact that the car is so raw. It keeps your adrenaline going, and I hope that I can convey that through this video. And if you're fortunate enough, really try these old cars. You might actually experience something else. I don't like the fact that a lot of people just say, hey, the newest car is the best. I think new cars has its charm, but I also believe that a lot of the old cars are made in its ultimate form because car industry didn't have such regulations. And really, there was a lot more freelancing work that people can do. A smaller team working on a passionate project than really commercializing a true car enthusiast brand with something like, you know, getting acquired by Audi, maybe by Lamborghini is a good example. The electronics become so great, but at the same time, you know, that small team making the Countach feel is no longer there. And I want to show that to viewers, and if you get the opportunity to experience yourself, maybe it will speak to you. So, and also, like, this is the funny part is I actually was talking to you, you know, when we're eating today about the project I'm working on. So I'm working on an app called Car Meets. It's for car enthusiasts to, you know, bring all the car enthusiasts together. So check it out. We're actually having some collaboration. So look out, we're having some new features coming out, and then, you know, Colin, you're going to be obviously a part of it to make it great. And my thing is, I want to live a life where I can use my experience to really influence people who never actually get the chance to have this experience, and try to convey that to you, right? And I think that's really very important. And that's the goal, is living the life to actually impact and create an impact for other people. Yeah, I mean, that kind of wraps up my story. If there's any questions, please, you know, comment below, and, you know, Colin and I are going to look at it. Maybe there's any secondary questions, we can make another video specifically on these type of things. I mean, there's many things I want to talk about with you guys, and because of the time constraint, this is kind of a snippet, a snapshot of exactly what I did with my cars. And yeah, stay tuned. Maybe we'll have more content. Have a nice day.